In this week's episode, we're going to take a look at Microsoft Defender for Identity. What is it? What does it do? And more importantly, how can it protect you against the bad guys? Check it out. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Andy here, so nice to see you. Hey, listen, hackers are becoming bolder and they're using more sophisticated tools in order to gain access to your systems for the purpose of either damaging your data, for example, ransomware, or stealing your data, industrial espionage. Either way, you have to be ready for it. So on today's episode, I thought I would take a look at Defender for Identity. And this is an important component that integrates with the Microsoft Defender security suite of products. It can use artificial intelligence or AI and machine learning, and it looks at behavioral analytics of your users. Now, of course, with Microsoft Defender, the suite of products anyway that are integrated into the cloud, this extends those capabilities to your on-premises systems. So if you're like many, have an on-premises Active Directory, you're connected to the cloud in a hybrid mode, this can be an invaluable tool at analyzing users' behavior to determine whether it's a real user or not. So we're going to take a look at that. It's absolutely critical, and I've got some good demos here. So make sure that you stay to the end because that you'll definitely learn something. Now, just want to mention I'm almost at 100,000 subscribers, just 1,000 or so more to go. I can't tell you how excited I am, and thank you so much for your support. If you haven't subscribed, then I would really appreciate it. Help me get that 100,000. Click on that subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified of new and upcoming videos. And if you have questions, I love questions, get those down below. And if you want even more, of course, then you can join our Patreon site for access to full courses, and so much more details are just there. So I think without any further ado, let's jump in, let's take a look at Defender for Identity, and let's see what we can learn today. Enjoy. So I'm kicking off here in the main Defender for 365 portal here, and this is the security.microsoft.com, and you can see that up here you get lots of reporting about the overall status of your general environment. I'm going to click into settings, and in settings you can see we have a section here called identities, and this is the main admin portal for Defender for Identity. And at the moment you can see I've got a single domain controller, and I've already deployed the sensor. I'll come back and show you how I did that shortly. But the sensor gives me an update of everything that's going on within my organization. To add a sensor, what you would need to do is simply just click on Add the Sensor. You get a key, and the key is basically an identifier. So when you install it, it lets the domain controller know which tenant it needs to be installed into. So I suppose the first thing that we need to think about is how do we go ahead and install the tenant? So essentially you just download the tenant like I've just shown you, and now of course we need to go ahead and configure it on the Windows Server. Let's take a look at how this works. So I'm just flipping over to my Windows Server, and you can see that the executable has come in. So I'm just going to launch that client now. And I'm currently running on a Windows Server, and you can see that it's actually detected that it's a domain controller. If it wasn't a domain controller, you would then have the option to put it on a standalone server. But in this case, I'm quite happy. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to click on Next. The key that I've just been generated for me, of course, I need to paste that in, and that will uniquely identify my tenant to the Windows Server. And this just takes a few moments just to go ahead and install. The next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a group managed service account. This is a really useful feature, and it's good security so that you don't want to have to use, for example, an admin account or a regular user account. That's really, really bad security, especially in this scenario. So I'm going to just create a very simple group managed service account here. And then once you've done that, what I want to do is I'm going to flip over into group policy management, and I'm going to do a group policy for my domain. Of course, I'll need to give that account that I've just given the appropriate permissions. So I'm going to come into the domain controllers policy here, the default domain controllers. I'm going to come into computer configuration. I'm going to come into policies, and I'm going to come into Windows settings. And here in Windows settings, I'm going to come into the security settings. And here we have that option there for the policy assignment. So I'm just going to select this one as log on as a service, and I'm going to add that group that I've just created. And again, this will just save any kind of hassle with out of sync passwords, because the passwords will automatically sync and I really don't need to worry about it. So again, I'm creating that group, just add that group in, of course, then click OK, and we are now done. Okay, so there we go. So now I'm going to click on apply, click on OK, and I'm just going to close that down. So again, really important that you assign it as a group managed service account, not as a regular user account. So coming back into my portal, you can see I'm now going to say I want to use that group managed service account. I'll just add in my credentials here. And once I've done that, I'm pretty good to go. All right, so just click onto that and then obviously type in a password and then click on go, and we're done. So now that the server is in, you can see that it's now giving us a status, and it's indicating on the left hand side that it is indeed a domain controller. So what we can do is, now that the client is running, we can go into the properties of the client, and you can see that we get a card, and the card gives us some information. It tells us when it was installed and when it was generated, and also it makes some recommendations. So in this case, you can see an NTLM issue. So just taking a quick look at the architecture here, you can see that we've now placed our sensor in our domain controller, and you can also, by the way, install it on an ADFS device as well. What I'm now going to show you is, let's have a quick look then in Microsoft Sentinel and how Defender for Identity can help you detect an adversary in the middle attack. So here we are in Microsoft Sentinel, and in Microsoft Sentinel, I'm going to come down here into incidents. Now, an incident can be anything that is quite severe. So of course, if an alert is picked up, after so many alerts, it will create an incident. Now, in this example, you can see that we have an advanced adversary in the middle attack going on, and you can see that the user is at risk. Now, typically this type of attack occurs, it's typically phishing, of course, and it could be where the user's device has been intercepted. Maybe the user's been lured away to a potentially malicious website. And so I can click onto the incident here, and you can see here that we essentially want to disrupt the bad guy. And you can see that we have a number of Defender products here that we are implementing. If I scroll down, it shows me which users have been affected here. So potentially which users and devices. And again, you can see what tactics and techniques the bad guy is using. And you can see this is what we call the MITRE attack chain. So this is kind of the traditional way, the step-by-step guide that hackers will typically try to get into your environment. So you can see that they've got credential access here, and this is basically they're stealing it from a session web cookie. And also they're evading detection. What have they discovered? They've discovered the account, network shares, things like permissions and group membership, and they have attained actual access. Now, what we can do is if I go into the full details here of this potential incident, and this is really cool, you can see, first of all, we've got the timeline of the incident. So this is the absolute step-by-step guide, everything that's going on. So you can see the user has clicked on various things, and it actually shows you what the user is doing and the step-by-step guide here. This is really useful, by the way. The other thing that we've also got here is I can scroll down and you can see what threat indicators have been highlighted. And of course, you can decide what you want to do with the incident. So you might, for example, use what we call a playbook. And a playbook in Sentinel is essentially, let's say, for example, you got a ransomware attack. It would completely isolate that particular machine. It would isolate it from your network. It wouldn't disconnect the hacker, but it isolates it from the network. In that way, you can learn the tactics and the techniques that the hacker is using to prevent like-for-like attacks from reoccurring. On the left-hand side here, again, you get that same information. And now you might think, okay, I want to go ahead and investigate this. Now this brings up what we call the investigation graph, and the idea here is it gives you a complete step-by-step, and you can see the relationship between the user and the original attack here. So you can see here, if I scroll in here, this is the machine that was actually attacked. I can go in and I can view the various alerts. And again, really useful to know. Now, the other thing that we've got here is, again, I can view that timeline. So again, you can see the suspicious URL. If you want more details on that, you can click onto that and you can see that it highlights that particular URL. And again, you can go in and analyze that a little bit more. If for example, if there was a particular connection or something like that, again, you could walk through each of the steps in the timeline. The other thing that we can go, again, if you want more details on that, so actually what happened, how they got in, this is absolutely awesome, you see. And then finally, the entities. So you can see here the users, she was using Microsoft Word. And you can see, I can scroll down, for example, there might be from the IP address that's coming in, and it shows you every single step. So for example, if it was a malicious script, you might learn actually how the script actually works. So again, I can click onto that. I can go into more information on that particular script. I can dive into it. And of course, the security copilot feature, which is the new copilot feature for security, which is absolutely awesome, by the way. And as soon as I've got a license for that, I'll demo that for you. And you can basically right click and you can reverse engineer, for example, a script to find out actually what it was really doing. So I think this is an absolutely fantastic tool. So Sentinel and the likes of Defender for Identity is such an important feature. So lastly, I just want to come back into Microsoft Defender for Identity and I just want to have a quick look at some of these settings. So you can see this is where you would install those service accounts that we looked at earlier on. And again, you can also manage any action accounts. So if you've got like scripts or any kind of apps running that need that, then you can run that as well. If your users are using a VPN, the last thing that you want is lots of kind of false alerts coming up. So again, you can enable your radius accounting services there to work with your VPNs, of course. Are there, I showed you this earlier, but if there are any kind of health issues, for example, if a sensor is not working, you can see everything's fine here at the moment, then it will alert you and it will let you know. You can also remove the learning period. So at the moment, you can see here, these are the types of the attacks that we're looking for. Things like golden ticket attacks, identity theft attacks, and so on. So once the learning period is on, then of course you can switch that off again. You've got a number of different sensitivity or entity tags rather, so you can basically add in particular users, devices or groups, and you can specify these as sensitive. In addition, of course, if you've got one that's a honey token account or if things like an exchange server, you can bring those in as well. You can also do some exclusions, of course, so maybe there are some features that you want to exclude, and you can also set up notifications, of course, here. So, for example, one of the first things you want to do is obviously add in a recipient, an admin email account there, or it might be a group email account. Likewise, we've got alert and also syslog notifications, so you can add in the accounts there. All right. So there you have it, Defender for Identity. I really hope you enjoyed that session and that you got something out of it. Just a quick reminder, if you did enjoy it, hit the like button, give me a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And if you've not subscribed, help me get that 100,000 subscribers. Come on, click that subscribe button, come on board and join my learning community. And if you have questions and comments about this or any of my sessions, as always, just get those down below. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.